Hi, my name is Jay Mcmaken with Military Mortgage Boot Camp. What we're bringing to you today is a quick webinar, and we're going to teach you how to attract realtors as a loan officer and brand yourself as the VA loan officer in your area, and by myth busting. Myth busting is a real cool way to do it. It's kind of fun. Plus, you get to put to rest all these myths about VA loans, and ultimately, it's the veteran that's going to benefit for that. So let me go ahead and jump in here real quick and introduce you to my team. Again, my name is Jay Mcmaken. I'm the founder and CEO of Military Mortgage Boot Camp. Mike, Facebook Fisher, we call him Facebook Fish, is our president. And we have Doug Top. And for those of you that don't know, Top is just a short word for what's called a master sergeant or a top sergeant in the military. And Doug Cook is a retired top from the Army. He is our regional director out there on the West Coast. So I'm just going to jump in right away here. And so this little tutorial is called Attract Realtors by VA Myth Busting and Brand Yourself as the VA Loan Officer. So what I want to do is I'm going to just always open everything because we do right by the veteran here at Military Mortgage Boot Camp. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself. Like I said, Top is a retired Army veteran. And President Lincoln is the one that came up with the idea from the VA, although it was implemented in 1944 from President Roosevelt. Our mission is to fulfill President Lincoln's promise to care for him who shall borne the battle and for his widow and his orphans by serving and honoring the men and women who are America's veterans. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Fish, and let you do the VA myth-busting slides.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jay. I'm really passionate about, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but just this morning I was talking to another loan officer on Facebook, of course, on Facebook Fish, and we were chatting about the number of listings that say conventional only. And they won't even take a veteran's offer. And it seems like the veterans have earned the right. They're entitled. They should be able to buy a house. I mean, why are they being excluded? So the fact that some agents or perhaps the perceptions have prevailed over the years that the VA loan is a weak loan and it doesn't go through the process, it's just not always the truth. So I know Jay has put a ton of energy into researching what the biggest problems are. And I bet you as a loan officer, you're watching this, perhaps even an agent watching, you've seen some of these myths and you perhaps overcome them or perhaps seen them perhaps kill a deal and keep a veteran from getting a house they really wanted. So what we're going to talk about are what we think are the most prevalent myths nationwide. There's a tiny bit of truth to one or two of them, but for the most part, these myths need to be busted. First myth, zero down is a weak buyer. We're going to jump right in and show how most veterans are actually more qualified than many conventional buyers. VA loans are harder to get through underwriting. In many cases, the turn times are equivalent, sometimes even faster. So we're going to show that that's not the case either. VA loans take longer to close. I think I did my Facebook thing. I was chatting too much. I flip-flop. I just talked about the timeline. The underwriting piece, very critical to understand that the VA wants to help us close loans. VA loans are actually one of the most guaranteed loans in the loan business.
It is the only guaranteed loan.
Exactly. Fully guaranteed. Now, the seller has to pay for the veteran's fees. This myth, this one needs to die. I hear this all the time from title agents, and there's a couple pieces that still are prevalent in the market today.
Exact date that was implemented, guys? Never.
Never, exactly.
Never had to pay for veterans.
Never, since 44-ish. When my father, the Vietnam veteran, was born. You can only have one VA loan. I'm closing a veteran right now that has two. You certainly can. There's a few cases. Jay's going to talk about it a little bit more as we move along. VA appraisals are tougher. Now, in some markets, they're slightly slower, but we're going to explain to you exactly how you can track that and how you can keep everything on track. And in many cases, they're actually better. So
awesome. All right, thanks, Fish, for that. So, Top, I'm going to have you jump in right on myth number one.
Okay, let's talk about zero down equals weak buyer. That's offensive. That's offensive as a veteran. If you look at the statistics from 2016, the median FICO score for a veteran was 738. The median liquid assets was $16,989. The average loan amount for VA loans was $253,261. That's great. That's a great loan, at least in my market, and I take it any day because you know what? It's not about the money. It's about taking care of the veteran. And even though the VA loan doesn't require down payment.
And this is important, guys.
Yeah, 28% of veterans made a down payment. Okay, and there's a couple different reasons that they can make that down payment, whether it's to lower their funding fee, or they want to have a lower loan amount, lower monthly payments. You know, FHA, no loan can compare to this loan. So as far as that's concerned, if you can go to the next slide, Fish. Okay, 83% of veterans use their benefits after active duty.
Why is that, Top?
Why is that? Why?
Why is that important?
It's important because they're buying homes. They're coming home from being deployed, serving. They want to set roots because I was in for 1 month shy of 25 years, and I can't tell you how many times I moved. And I wanted to buy a home. I wanted to set roots and stay put.
Now, why is that important note for loan officers to know that 83% of veterans don't buy until they're a civilian again?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter whether you live in a town that has
exactly. That was the answer I was looking for.
Oh shit. Okay.
We got it. We're just real here, peeps.
Okay, no, really. So I live in a small town in southern Utah. Okay, we don't have any military bases nearby. Nellis Air Force Base is in Las Vegas, 2.5 hours away.
But does that stop you from doing VA loans?
No, that's the majority of my business is VA loans.
How many do you have in process right now, Doug? Like 7, 8, 10?
9.
you hit every number but the one.
And you've been in the business how long? 1 year basically out of the service?
A little over a year I retired from the Army.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Finish the slide. Let's go.
Right. And so, you know, veterans are strong buyers. 28% of veterans 25 and older at least have a bachelor's degree. You know why? Because when we're in the service, going to school, when you get a chance to go to school, that helps you towards promotion. So they're getting that education either while they're in school or prior to getting in the military via ROTC program or the service academies. They're really pushing schools in the military.
And I think it's important to note that too. Let me just jump in here, Tom. From a perception standpoint, when you're dealing with listing agents or whatever type of agent you're dealing with, especially if you're in an affluent area where your average loan amount is 200-something thousand, people associate a college degree with a stronger buyer.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. And same thing with realtors. If they, you know, anyway, don't get me started on realtors.
Okay.
Hey,
one point I want to point out here on top slide too is the median household income. Look at the difference nationwide from a veteran, how much money they make versus a regular civilian. So don't tell me that these people don't have money. They make money.
Right.
Jay, these are conventional buyers. These are, I mean, they're using a different.
That's why I look at this right here.
Buyers all day long.
Right.
That is a conventional buyer profile all day long. All right. Next slide, Top.
So go back one real quick. Sorry. I want to hit that. 10.1 million of my fellow veterans are service Canadian disability rating.
Yes, huge. I'm sorry. Huge.
It's terrible on a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, but by having that, it's financially benefiting the veteran.
Yes.
So we'll get into that a little bit later in the slide project. Go ahead, Fish. Okay, we talked about that. So that's busted. VA loans are harder to get through underwriting. No. Underwriters are encouraged to consider every possible appropriate factor in seeking a proper basis for approving loan applications for every qualified veteran. That's right there in the VA pamphlet 26-7. Okay, as long as the lender's documenting their reason, you can write letter of explanations all day long about every little thing, and the VA is going to look at that because the VA wants to help veterans, despite all this bullshit that's in the media. Yeah, that's problems in the past, not anymore. They're working.
And I'll say this, that this is the truest statement I can ever make. Everyone thinks VA underwriting is hard or difficult. It's as simple as this one statement right here. If you're telling the truth, you should be able to prove it in a paper trail. Right. And I think a lot of loan officers, they don't just set that expectation up front with the veteran, because if you're not a veteran yourself, you might not have that common bond that Doug and I have with them. But, you know, you could offend a veteran real quick by, you know, just doing some certain things. So it's always best to just say that sentence. Look, it's not hard. If you're telling the truth, you should be able to have a paper trail and we'll get you a loan.
Right. And within our community, it's not hard to get the documentation. First of all, the veteran is told to keep every piece of documentation they have in the military.
But do they? 10 years from now, 15? No, because we don't. So that's why you have to be skilled as a loan officer to know what the documentation is, and that's part of being part of boot camp where we train on that stuff.
Right.
And I can say, not to interrupt you guys, but, my father served, but I didn't serve. But, by surrounding myself with you guys in boot camp, over the last several years, I've adopted this mentality as well. And I know a lot of loan officers were like myself where they, I'll get to COE later, and I'm not going to worry about a live and well statement. I don't even know what that is. And by not, understanding what you needed in understanding the appropriate process in understanding how to empathize with the veterans, you're really doing them a disservice and delaying the process in many cases.
Right. When you're talking to a veteran, I know we're getting a little off track, but this is important. If you're talking to a veteran and they relay things, relate things to different things, whether it's a duty station or something else. If you relate it to the enlistment process, they'll understand.
Absolutely.
Say, okay, you know what? Act like I'm your recruiter. I'm building your enlistment packet. Once we get your enlistment packet, we're going to send it to MEPS, Military Assets Processing Station, where you enlist. And they relate that to the underwriter or processing. Okay, they'll understand that, but you've got to hold them accountable to get their documentation.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got it. If they don't have it personally, we can find a way of getting it.
All right, so let me just kind of bring this back up in here. So underwriting, again, that it's hard. It's not hard because the VA is empowering the underwriters to basically use everything but the kitchen sink to approve them. But that leads me into overlays. Talk about overlays.
Yeah, overlays. VA's got they've got the least amount of overlays of any program. I mean, because financial institutions and the VA want to help the veterans. Look at the portfolio performance default. VA 1.98% default. That's excellent. That's crazy compared to conventional and FHA. Then you got lender protection for the default.
This is the real reason right here.
Right. You touched on that earlier that, the VA is the only one that's got some type of a guarantee.
And this is the very reason that there aren't that many overlays because they are getting a guarantee. On a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan, if it defaults, Fannie Mae pays $0 to the lender. You want to know why? Because you weren't supposed to foreclose. You had 20% down, an 800 FICO score, but you threw your keys back because your house was upside down.
Yeah, and a majority of veterans are disciplined. There are always bad apples in every group that you get. Okay, but they're not gonna foreclose. If they do, then it's got to be some kind of catastrophic event that made that happen. Okay. Also, and Mike touched on this earlier, looks good for lenders to help veterans. You can see the passion that I have. You can see the passion that Jay has. And Mike, since he's been working with Jay and me and the other veterans, he's got a passion for it too.
Absolutely.
We used to be in a country where, our parents went to Vietnam, they came home, got spit on. And I can't even imagine that. Okay? And we learned from it as a country. So now we've got a lot of patriotism going on. And, it's not as much as back when I was a kid, but we appreciate the veterans. We show that. And by you showing that you care about the veterans and learning more about the VA loan to help the veteran, this is going to help your business because not only you help yourself, you're helping them.
And dude, how's this? And you can tell this to your realtor partners, and I'm saying it to all of you. It's the greatest way to say thank you for your service is to be knowledgeable about this product because it is a benefit they're entitled to. Why are they entitled to it? Because we were willing to die for this country or possibly get captured for it. That's why. Every single one of us, men and women that are brothers and sisters, we all raised our right hand. We all swore in and said, we will protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. But part of that in our head was like, when we're done, we should be able to buy a house and raise our family like the American dream. So it is a great way to say thank you for your service to a veteran, for you to be knowledgeable on a VA loan.
Also, sorry, let me go back to something real quick you just touched on, Jay. I know we're taking a lot of time, but not only for the veterans that would come home. I had many of my soldiers under me that didn't get to come home. True. They didn't get to live the American dream. So it's not just for that veteran that's in front of your face. It's for all veterans. So it's if you truly care about veterans and want to help them, learn the program.
That's real talk, Top. All right, that myth busted. So let's go on to the next one. VA loans take longer. Top,
Okay, I talked about it earlier. VA loans are the bulk of my business. I'm able to close VA loans with my process with my team in 21 days. On the average, the average turn time from application to close last year was 28 days. Now you'll get pushback by realtors saying, "Oh, it's the appraisal process takes longer," and Jay will talk about that in a minute. But it's just one more step, and it doesn't take that long. It just goes back to the VA for them to look at the appraisal and say, give it a notice of value. That doesn't take that much time. So if I can close them in 21 days, if the nation can close them in 28 days, that's blowing all the other programs out of the water.
Awesome. All right, so that myth busted. So I'm going to jump in here. Thank you, Top. I appreciate it. You did an awesome job. I'm going to jump in here and take over for the next few. So the seller has to pay for the veteran fees. Oh, man, do I love this one. Every realtor in the nation wants to scream this from the top of their lungs. It's a myth. There's never, ever been something that's more untrue on a loan. The veteran can pay for their own unallowable fees. So let's talk about it. Unallowable fees are a list of fees that the veteran assume. This is what the VA says they cannot pay, because in the eyes of the VA, this is considered to a third-party company. That's their cost of doing business. That's why you can't have, if you look on this list, an underwriting fee. You're a lender, you underwrite loans, underwrite it. That's your cost of doing business. That's why you get paid a commission in the yield spread from Wall Street or Fannie Mae or Ginnie Mae, who's ever locking your rate. Don't pass that on to the veteran. And this list of fees right here, whether it's doc prep, underwriting, processing, application, pest inspection, termite, attorney fee, like we really need an attorney to tell us how to close a loan, please, and then give them $1,200 for it. Okay, New York, that was directed at you. When you go back to this, you can't charge any of these fees only if you look at my little cursor up here, there's a 1% origination, okay? Historically, throughout time, all lenders charge 1% origination. That is not the case nowadays, especially on VA home loans. So when there's no origination, then the veteran can pay every single one of these fees up to 1%, and that does include the termite. So myth busted. Myth number 5, you can only have one VA home loan in your whole entire lifetime. Or if you ever foreclose on one, you can never have another one. So let's talk about this. There's a little bit of truth to that, just like every stereotype. Every veteran has 2 sets of entitlement, and the first set is called basic entitlement. The second set is called bonus entitlement. Let's talk about basic entitlement. This is kind of where you get that stereotype, you can only have one loan. Basic entitlement is speaking to the loan officer saying, look, this is for loan amounts from 0 to $144,000. If you have a loan in this category, correct, you cannot have another loan in that category. You can only have one. But there's bonus entitlement that is available to that. So if you have a loan from 0 to $144,000, can the veteran get another loan? Sure, but the loan amount has to be $144,01 up to whatever the county guaranteed loan maximum is. Now the county guaranteed loan maximum has been raised to $424,100 by Freddie Mac, because that's the scale that VA follows. So all the county limits have been raised. And I'll say this, guys, the VA doesn't have a max loan amount. They have a max loan amount that they guarantee. So let's talk about entitlement. So I'm going to get back to this up real quick. You look at this slide, the max guarantee loan amount being $424,100. And I know there's some high balance counties that are out there. So this is, just play along with us. We know you guys are awesome and have bigger loans. So play along with us. So you have your max loan amount, okay? Your entitlement is always going to be 25% of that. So this is the backbone of a VA loan. And if I could teach you guys anything, it would be the formula for this. Because once you understand the formula, you can interchange and plug numbers all over the place because the formula doesn't change. And if you understand this, you literally understand 75% of VA loans just in one thing, because it is the backbone. So we're going to treat it like a checking account. And when our county maximum is $424,100, 25% of that is $106.25. So that's going to be our beginning balance on our checking account is $106,025. Now, if I was to go get a $144,000 loan in North Carolina as a young Marine, I buy my first home, and now my 4 years are up, and I want to move back here to Michigan, which is where we're at, but I want to keep this house in North Carolina because let's say it's a mile off a base, and I know that I can rent that out and collect rental income. Can you do that on a VA loan? Absolutely. You have to purchase it as an owner-occupied residence, but you can refinance it as an investment. You have to live in it, then leave, live in it, then leave, okay? But so I want to keep this as a rental property. So I say, okay, I want to buy my second home back in Michigan. I can do that, but how do I find my max loan amount? So we start in our checking account. We have 106,025. I'm going to subtract out 36,000 because my loan's 144, meaning that I used all of my amount in the left-hand column here in basic category. So now when I subtract 36,000 from 106,025, that leaves me with 70,025. To find your max loan amount that the VA will guarantee, you're always going to take your remaining entitlement and multiply times 4. So in this scenario, that's $280,100. So I could have a house out in North Carolina for 144, and then I can come home here in Michigan and buy 0 down up to 280. So let's do another quick scenario. If you guys have a scratch pad and paper, this is great. Go ahead and pick it up and follow along. Let's say I have a mortgage on a previously owner-occupied residence, and this time we'll just say Virginia, right? And I purchased, well, Virginia, 130,000, that ain't happening. Let's say, give us a better place. How about
South Carolina?
Yeah, South Carolina, 130,000. Yeah, Virginia, 130. That buys you a room. So South Carolina, 130,000. So now, if I look at my max entitlement for my basic, I got 36,000 is the most I can have in basic. So I have to take that loan amount of 130, multiply times 25%. That value comes out to $32,500. I need to subtract that from the amount I have in my basic. That will leave me with $3,500 left in remaining in my basic category. So now I'm going to take that $3,500 and I'm going to add it to the bonus amount. Now I haven't touched any of my bonus, so that's still full, like a full tank of gas. I have 70,025. I add the 3,500. I'm at 73,525. So now to find my max loan amount, 0 down, I'm going to take my remaining entitlement of 73,525 times 4, and I get 294,100. So that's how much I can go 0 down on my second loan. But you'll hear this question from realtors. But what happens if your purchase price is 394,100? Well, on an FHA and a conventional loan, guess what? You're coming to close with 100 grand. Not on a VA loan. The veteran only has to pay 25% of the difference between the max loan amount and the purchase price. The other 75%, they get to roll into their max loan amount. So it's really not their max loan amount. It's an oxymoron, kind of like military intelligence, right? So the veteran only has to pay 25% of the difference. That other 75% gets rolled into the loan amount, and yes, they have to qualify for that larger loan amount. But you cannot do that on any mortgage product anywhere. Myth busted. So let's move on. But I want to show you real quick before I bust that myth, how we exceed the max loan amount on a guarantee. Remember, the VA doesn't have a max loan amount they guarantee. Can you do $1 million loan cash out? Sure. Here's how you do it. A lender has the right to do any loan amount they want to, but they want that warm, snuggly guarantee. I don't know if you guys seen Tommy Boy. It's the guy in the auto plant. We just want that guarantee. Makes us feel good at night. Tommy's like, I'll take a crap in a box. I got time. Okay. So $1 million loan. We need a guarantee. 25% of $1 million, $250,000. So I know I need $250 as a lender to guarantee this loan through the VA. I know the max loan amount is $424,100. So 25% of that is $106,025. So out of the $250,000 I need to guarantee this loan, I know the VA is going to give me $106,025. The remaining amount I need to make a complete guarantee is $143,975. That's on the borrower. That's their requirement. The good news in a refi, you can take care of that in the form of equity. So to do $1 million cash out VA loan, you need an appraisal of $1.143975. Deal. You cannot do that on any other loan. Try that on jumbo. Myth busted. So one more thing with the funding fee, and this kind of goes back to what Top was talking about with disability. There's 3 ways that you can pay the funding fee. You can pay it cash to close with borrower funds, and all funds on a VA loan can be gift funds. You can do it through seller concessions, or you can finance it into the transaction, which is what most borrowers do. When you're financing, that automatically screams interest rate. So we have to have an interest rate. And this is why it's so important to know that the myth that, these people are weak buyers, 28% of veterans in 2016 actually put money down to avoid a higher interest rate. Because look at the chart, guys. If you go 0 down on your first time use, it's 2.15%. On your subsequent use, it jumps to 3.3. That's the VA's polite little way of incentivizing the veteran to put some more money down. So if you notice in first-time use or subsequent use, it doesn't matter. When you put 5% down, it drops the interest rate to 1.5%. 10% drops it to 1.25%. And I don't know if you guys have ever had engineer clients. It doesn't matter if you're a civilian or a veteran, you're an engineer and you don't like interest. All right, so we're just going to move on from that slide. Myth busted. And this last one.
Wait.
Go ahead.
If you have VA, if the veteran has a disability rating.
That's right. I'm so sorry. That was the main point about this.
So 10% or more,
thank you, Tom.
That's going to save thousands of dollars.
Say that again clearly.
If a veteran has 10% or more disability or service-related disability awarded by the VA, then that funding fee is waived, saving them
Now
thousands.
let's talk about this. Look at the top tier over here. Subsequent use. Okay, so their second VA loan, just like the scenario. They bought a house over in North Carolina. Now they're a little older now. They got a little bit more money. You see the average, their household income $73,000. Their average loan amount $234,000. Well, take the average loan amount of $234,000 and go ahead and slap on 3.3 funding fee. You're talking freaking $7,000 that gets to stay in their pocket. They don't have to finance $7,000 over the life of the loan or come out of pocket or eat that up in their seller concessions. That's a big deal, guys. Thanks, Top.
You bet.
All right, so that myth busted. The last one is VA appraisals. And I'm going to joint do this one with Facebook Fish because he loves appraisals. And I'm teaching him how to battle these appraisers. So I'm going to make him do this slide. I'm throwing him under the bus right here. He didn't even know I was going to do this.
Hey, I love appraisals, right? And I love appraisers. This is actually cool, though. And this is where this myth that the VA appraisals are harder and they're more difficult. This is one of the most incorrect assumptions. The VA actually gives you two different chances to get value. You only get one with conventional and one with FHA. And I don't remember.
What's the first one, Fish?
First one for VA appraisal is Tidewater. Tidewater is awesome. Tidewater is essentially the appraiser telling you, hey, I tried to come up with value, did everything possible, but I'm going to give you 48 hours to plead your case, essentially, to show us.
Has the appraiser put a value on it yet, Fish?
Nope. It hasn't been released, hasn't been published. Just reaching out for value. So this is part of a VA loan. If they don't come up with value, they have to initiate Tidewater. And Tidewater goes out to the listing agent, the point of contact on the appraisal order form. So
wait, they're actually allowing the appraiser to influence the value?
They are allowing,
influence value. Yes, I did.
Yep. And so that's a big difference from conventional in FHA. Now, if your listing agent has no clue what Tidewater is, they've never done a VA loan, then this in many cases just kind of goes by and nothing happens. So best practice for loan officers in our boot camp is we essentially try to make sure that our listing agents are very familiar with it. They know to watch for it. We send them a template email describing what it is so that the listing agents are aware. Hey, if this happens, don't be alarmed. This is, chance one, basically. And this is something you're not going to find on any other appraisals. So that's awesome. 48 hours. Appraiser has to comment on every comp that's given back for Tidewater.
How many comps do they allow?
How many accounts do they allow? I'm going to say I don't.
3. We got you. That was a trick question. I threw it. Okay. The max you can get is 3 comps from the appraiser. And just understand, the appraisal process, he's reaching out to this listing.
They can send 3 more back, right? They can't
correct.
Back.
But they're asking for apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
Realtors have a bad habit of sending back pears, bananas, and oranges. And we get that. And so that's why they get so upset in the beginning. It's like, well, who's this appraiser to tell me my listing isn't there? Blah, blah, blah. Like, look, okay, they're allowing you to jump in and try to help influence your value. Don't look at it like a fight. Look at it like a partner that's trying to help you reach your goal. Now, if you listed it properly, that shouldn't be an issue, should it? No? Okay, so moving on. So what happens? They ask for 3 comps. The appraiser sends back the 3 comps, okay? The agent sends back the 3 comps. So we don't really like that, or says the appraiser. They're not apples to apples, says the appraiser. The appraiser says, this lady's crazy. No, I'm just kidding. And then they go ahead and they issue a value. So the purchase price was $160. The appraiser disagrees and says, this is $140. Boom. They stamp it with a value. At that point in time, that value is stuck on this appraisal for the next 6 months. So what happens is you now have the appraisers going to send the appraisal back to the lender. Now at the lender, we have what's called a SAR. SAR is an acronym for Staff Appraisal Reviewer. Every SAR is a VA underwriter, but not every VA underwriter is a SAR. They actually have the authority to underwrite the appraisal, and they're equal rank on the collar to the actual VA appraiser. So the SAR is going to issue what is called the NOV. NOV is an acronym for Notice of Value. You heard talk about that a little bit earlier. Once the NOV is issued, that is now the value that's stamped officially to the appraisal for the next 6 months. So you still have one more chance to get your value back. Another acronym, go figure with the military, right? ROV, reconsideration of value. This is where our SAR at the lender is saying, look, I'm equal rank on the collar with the appraiser. I agree that it's not 160,000. However, I do know my market, and I do not agree that it's 140,000. I disagree with that. I think it's 150,000. We've already talked to the seller. They're willing to come down $10,000 if you can come up $10,000 and help put this veteran in a home. So they're now reaching out to the SAR, the VA. The SAR at the VA actually has the authority to grant back up to 15% in value on that appraisal. But again, don't think that's going to happen just because you want to make a transaction go through and this realtor wants a paycheck and so do you. They're veterans working for other veterans at the VA. As of 4 years ago, in the mortgage side of VA, they no longer hire civilians. So they don't care about you. They don't care about the agent. They don't care about me. They care about that veteran. And they want to make sure that veteran's not going to purchase a home for more than what it's worth, nor do I. That's why they're very protective of them. So they want to see that the seller is throwing some skin in the game, trying to help that veteran get in the home. That's why the first question out of their mouth to the SAR at the lender is going to be, have you talked to the seller and are they willing to come down? That's why I say you need to already do that, already have your ducks in a row, because you can't be caught on the spot going, well, we were kind of waiting to see if you're going to do 15%. That is not the right answer. So that is how you're going to win those VA battles. So let's talk about the VA appraiser and why it's getting better. They're now actually held to a higher standard. They're in a scorecard because in November 2013.
Now, Jay, this is the same scorecard they use in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
That's exactly right, because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac went to the VA and said, look, during the meltdown, our houses were so upside down. Why weren't yours? They're like, because we said 1 square mile and you guys said 1 square mile, but we actually abided by 1 square mile and you were 1.69, 2.3, whatever. And so it's like kind of going to dad and getting a no, then trying to go to mom and getting yes, right? That's exactly why they were upside down. So your analysis when you're looking at CoreLogic is only as good as its risk factors that are in there. So Fannie and Freddie have now adopted the risk factors that VA had, as well as FHA is about to do that as well. So the point I'm making on all this is the whole theory of like, well, if we don't get a VA appraisal that appraises, we'll just flip it conventional and get our value. No more, Billy. Okay? That ain't going to happen because it's no longer a VA appraisal problem. It's an appraisal problem. Okay? So that being said, you might talk to some of your realtors and have them realize, hey, some of my conventional appraisals are getting way tougher. So that myth, absolutely 100% busted.
You know, Jay, one thing we didn't talk about on that last myth is the VA appraisal, the turn time. I mean, the turn times are posted, and in most markets, they're identical. They're the same appraisers. They have the same workload. There's a couple exceptions nationwide, but where would someone go to find out what the turn times are?
Great question. My easiest answer for you guys, and we'll post a link to our website for this, but if you wanted to check like right now, just Google VA mandatory turn times for appraisals and fees, and it'll pop you up with a map, and you can just hover over that state, and it'll tell you like Michigan here is 5 business days.
It's
5 business days. This is the point. From the time the appraiser accepts the order, 5 business days, the completed report has to be back on the lender's desk. Why doesn't anybody know this? Because the VA, although they have immense amount of information, they don't have a big old marketing department like Wells Fargo or somebody. They're on a government budget. They don't have a marketing department. Like if you want info, you come to them, they'll give you the info. Right, Todd? They don't send you emails going, hey, like check out the turn time for appraisers today. That's not how it works. But for example, you know, in certain areas like Colorado is really bad right now. It's just tough to get around Colorado and those mountainous states, especially with the snow. I mean, they've pushed it back. I mean, what areas you showed me fish in 24 hours, they got 6 feet of snow? like 2 days
Yeah,
ago?
that was like one of our friends met Didier somewhere in Colorado. I don't remember.
6 feet of snow. Yeah, I think that might back up your appraisal turn time.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? You guys can bitch all day long about a turn time. If it's equal playing field for everybody and everybody's got to abide on, shut up. Deal with it. That's just what it is for your area. And you tell your borrower, shut up. Deal with it. Veterans are awesome. They'll tell you, like, listen, man, don't treat me any different than a civilian. Okay, shut up and deal with it. That's what you do. That's what we do. But don't tell them shut up. That's not a good idea. I'm just messing with them. All right, we've had fun with you guys here today. Myth busted. So there's all of our myths. They are busted. We are Fish, Top, and J-Mac coming to you live for Military Mortgage Boot Camp, and we totally appreciate your time. Do you guys have anything else before we all sign out boot camp style?
Yeah, I do real quick, Jay. You know, we're trying to dispel myths nationwide, help you all out as loan officers. You know, we do help a lot of loan officers. We have a couple things that we offer. You know, if you want to learn more about what we do and the kind of programs that we have and events and things of that nature, just go ahead and click on the page that this video is attached to. Put your name, email, number, and look for for us to reach back out to you and chat with you a little bit about how boot camp can help you.
Top, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, this is Military Mortgage Boot Camp signing off to you guys. Boot camp style.